the next conversation we'll be having with a group of real estate experts who will be talking about real estate development and property management for the diaspora in Africa. And with that, I do have Miss Emma Miloya of Building in Kenya. She's an author. She co-authored that book with a friend of mine called Robin Emerson, who is also, who unfortunately was not gonna be there. Emma, I see that you've joined us.
Yes, the host will have to show my video. I'm not able to show my video, but I can hear you loud and clear, and I'm very happy to be here. It was very great to actually catch the tail end of the conversation. Very exciting conversation, and they're all like tying together. So I'm very happy to be here, and looking forward to a wonderful session.
Okay, thank you, Emma. And I look forward to actually hearing what you have to say. Personally, I love real estate. I actually studied real estate, so I'm always very eager. And in fact, you know, you're the past president of WIRE, which is Women in Real Estate in Kenya, which is an organization that I've actually gone for events. So I've seen the work that you've done, and I'm very happy that you're here today. And
thank you.
Before I ask a question, maybe you will share a little bit more about what you've done. We also have Mr. Donald Gishane of Beulah City. Donald is here. And also we have Zoliswa Daku of Daku Groups. She's here from South Africa, and she has great, she's been in the real estate industry for a very long time. So I'm really happy to just hear different perspectives, one from an architect, another one from an entrepreneur, and then another one from someone who studied law, but is in the real estate. So it's gonna be a very diverse conversation. Oh, I also see Mr. Julian Killer is right there with Mr. Donald together. So we'll have, hello. So it would be great to just hear all of that. So with that, I would really like to start with you, Emma, right? So you're an architect, right? So that's how you started. You are in the real estate industry, and we know real estate is something that is true and well-tested asset class, right? So for us who are in the investment world, we're always telling people you need to have real estate in your investment portfolio. But the challenge, and especially for the diaspora, is we have seen many people try to come into this space, but many people have failed, right? Even though we've had some successes. But what can you share with us about your thoughts? What do you think the diaspora need to do differently when they decide to invest in the real estate on the continent? And can you share some of those insights from the book you wrote, like I mentioned, Building in Kenya, which was very interesting. Can you just tell us what are the best practices that you think someone who is in the diaspora that they need to really think about when they're investing on the continent?
Yeah, thank you so much, Anne. And I mean, you said it. I think all Africans, maybe from a sense of we've always built, you know, people, just one generation of our grandparents and maybe part of even some of our parents built their own houses. You know, you built, it was a community effort. I think the way Africans are tied to land is the way Africans are tied to what in Kenya, in Kiswahili, we call mjengo. We just love it, you know, whether it makes financial sense or not, we love real estate. But you also said something very important, and I don't know whether the, you know, I can be allowed to share my screen, but real estate is a very sound investment if done correctly. I think I'll just quote one Franklin Roosevelt, who says, real estate cannot be lost or stolen, cannot be carried away, cannot be, and if purchased with common sense and paid for in full and managed with reasonable care, it's about the safest investment in the world. And I think that is true. Many times we've seen with all the fads that come and go, investing in building is one of the most sound, and you actually see what your investment is, and it appreciates. The need for housing, as long as, you know, people are still popping them babies, we're gonna need housing, you know. But the thing is if done with common sense, so that's a catch. And I think you said it, that there's been a lot of so many cases across, at least in the Kenyan sector, not only of diaspora, but even just even locals when we're investing in real estate and looking and seeing what options do I have. It's very important to first of all analyze your situation. Analyze your situation in the sense of why do I want to invest in real estate? Who am I in terms of personality? And in the book and many presentations you almost need to assess your personality and your risk appetite before you jump into real estate investment. Do I have the time? Because it's you said capital intensive, but it's also very resource intensive if you're going to actually do the construction and do a real estate development project. So much more if you're doing it remotely from the diaspora. What am I going to invest in? Because there's so many ways to invest in real estate. You don't have to actually be the one having to look for an architect, buy the land. There are many products out there that may match your personality. So you have to really ask yourself and see, what's my risk appetite? Who am I, and what kind of time do I have on my hands? Can I take a break and a sabbatical from my work for a year to come and just really do my due diligence before I invest in something? Or and how should I invest? So very fundamental questions when you're investing in real estate. Of course, the usual. Let me just share my screen. Thank you to the host. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it looks like it's coming up. Yes.
Okay, great. So looking at why am I investing and which one is for me? Am I doing it for the brand? A lot of us, a lot of diasporans sometimes will do it just to invest in something, trying to build something so that you can show people. Nimefika, nilienda majuu. I'm saying in Kiswahili, which means I've gone abroad. I've made it. Because everybody expects that of you. Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it for shelter? In terms of, this is something that you want to, when you want to come back home, you want to have a roof over your head, or you want a roof over your relatives or parents' head. So why am I doing this real estate investment? What kind of need is it meeting? What returns am I looking for? And therefore, when you ask yourself which one is for me, is it a long term? Am I looking at it for long term? Am I looking at it as self-actualization? I have made it. I want a house. It doesn't have to really make a lot of financial sense in that sense, because what it's the buttons that and what it's hitting for each person is different. Because I want that sense of having a roof over my head. It may not make financial sense. It's purely an emotional and emotive matter. Ego brand, I said that, a lot of this, and we use this in Kenya sometimes. Like, if I want to launch my political career, first thing, you must build a mansion. That shows that you can run something. So sometimes people do it for that. Am I looking, short-term, quick income? Then the dynamics, they are very different. And what if none of this is for you in terms of how can I then invest in real estate without any of these, challenges that might present themselves? And there are many, many products. So the question really then is, will I buy? Will I build? If I'm doing it from the diaspora, and the risks on both sides, and equally a lot of potential on both sides. So that's a fundamental question, and why and how and what am I doing this for? So basically, in terms of the book, Building in Kenya, we've looked at it from a perspective of someone who wants to develop, and looking at the personality and what factors do you have to consider when you're doing this from abroad. It can be very challenging. All of us have stories or have had stories of people putting in their money and hoping and trusting people back home to be able to manage that process for you, and that may not always be practical. So you really have to ask, am I going to do the building myself? Do I have the time and resources to manage all these people? If you look at that, you've got all these factors to consider when you're doing real estate. You've got all the cycle, and the book goes into this, identifying land, and we all know also land buying and due diligence that's required from that is very intensive. The business case for it, going back to, why am I doing this? Does it make sense? If it does not make sense, If there are much better ways of making a quick buck, then don't safer and better ways for you in terms of your circumstances, then maybe real estate development is not for you. So some fundamental questions to ask is from a diaspora perspective, the distance, is it feasible for me to be a real estate developer in terms of managing the process hand on hand, or is buying a more viable option for me? Am I able to adequately carry out due diligence, even when you're buying, because you do have to do diligence if you're buying and ensuring that the buildings have been put up on land that's been acquired in the correct manner. So maybe buying would suit you better as someone in the diaspora, but there's certainly many questions around that, and I'm sure I'll get another chance to just delve into what then you need to think about when you're buying and the opportunities available in that regard. But thank you for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emma, for sharing that, because it's true. Historically, most people, live in the parents, you're told, go buy a piece of land, and then develop, and that's how it is. But if you're in the diaspora, is that the right way? We all developers, it's capital intensive, like you said. It is time consuming. You have to do a lot of due diligence on the land, on the requirements. All that is a lot. So again, I really like the questions that you're putting in place in the book and sharing the process, because it's very important that when we do things the right way. And I believe that is what our next presenter, Mr. Donald Gishane of Beulah City, will be talking about. And so for me, Donald, what I really would like to find out from you, you're an entrepreneur, you are a real estate developer, you're a diaspora returnee, and I know on your pipeline you have really great real estate projects under Beulah City. And so can you share with us what it is that your team is doing to ensure that the Africa diaspora is able to access quality real estate projects, affordable real estate opportunities, because I think those are two things: quality and the opportunities. Could you share with us more about what it is that you're doing at Beulah City and how the diaspora can engage to make sure that they get the right kind of real estate project?
Thank you, Anne, and evening, everyone. Look, we, as Beulah Holdings or Beulah City, we came together and said, look, we've had a history of living abroad, understood the dynamics of being, African diaspora, not living in the country that we were born and raised in. I'll be honest with you, for us and for many Africans who are out there, one of the things, of course, as has been mentioned by the earlier speakers, is looking at real estate and wanting a piece of the pie, not just from an investor standpoint, but sometimes it's a cultural thing, just to say that you have something that you own back home. I remember I was in the same case, both my chairman, Julian, who's next to me, and myself, we lived abroad for over 10 years, maybe 15 years. And the attachment to being back home was a big thing. And real estate at the time, the boom had started and everyone was talking about a piece of parcel of land, a piece of the pie, trying to figure out then how do we make this happen. But I'll tell you, our interest was generated even while we were still living in the US. And we looked at real estate completely different, because we even started to look at owning properties in the US. So for us, it wasn't just that we wanted to invest back home. It's just what could we learn and what are the things that we could learn and take with us from living in the US. Now, I want to say quickly that one of the things that, and I'll get to your question, and one of the things that was very vital for us was the fact that quality was such a big thing. Now, where we lived in the US and a lot of the developments in the area, we found ourselves going, out and looking at the real estate developments in the cities that we lived at. And one of the things that we realized was that quality was such a big thing. And when we researched and did some groundwork as far as that was concerned, we realized one thing: the population is the one that drives quality. When you demand quality, the developers give quality. Now, when we came back home and started to look at what was happening on the ground, it was disheartening. As you know, in Kenya, for those who are not Kenyans, let me put it out there that we have a shortage of 2 million homes. 2 million homes are required right now. 2 million units, dwelling units are required right now. Yet this country, with all the developers that we have, with all the influx of people from the east and different parts coming in to do all the development they can, we are only churning out 35,000 units every year. The demand is high. It's insatiable right now because the growth continues to grow. And as Emma said, as long as babies are being popped, homes will be required. And for us, we said, okay, so what is on the ground here? And when we went around and started to look at what developers were putting out, it was actually quite sorry or quite sad that the quality of units being churned out was not commensurate with the price points that were being charged in the market. Number one, access to finance for end user or end user buyers was non-existent. And in fact, with the little that was available from the financial institutions, I mean, you would pay through the nose to just try and own a very small property. And so when we looked at it, we said, look, you go to college in the US, the first year out of college, you got your first job. The first thing you would do is invest in a house because it's accessible. So you get a unit or you get a house in the US for 3% at a 3% interest. When you compare that and you come back to Africa, you're being asked for 16, 17, 18%. It's not practical. And then the unit quality was so low. And so we sat down and said, as Beulah, well, how can we come up with a product that would rival what the market has? And to be honest, once we did so much research, we went into it, we spoke with different developers, we looked at different contractors. We've been at this for the last 10, 15 years, just trying to understand what is the market providing, so that by the time we are rolling out a product, it's a product that speaks for itself. And I'll tell you, we are rolling out our first project. We have 6 on the pipeline right now, but we're rolling out our first project in October, end of October of this year. And I can tell you this, from any conversation that we've had, any sit down that we've had, anybody that we have shown what we are trying to do, everyone is saying this is gonna be the real affordable housing. Now, I was avoiding saying affordable because in Kenya, the word affordable when it comes to housing or real estate has been completely misconstrued. Everyone is talking about affordable, but every developer is charging an arm and a leg. Now, I have been guilty in the past of going into developments, and I've done some investments in developments. And I'll tell you, the developer greed in this nation, and I believe in most parts of Africa, is quite high. Why is that? It's because the demand for these units are so high. So quality is not something anybody's looking at. Yet the demand being so high, what you do is developers get so greedy, so they're not putting out what they need to actually do. They put out what they must or what they can get away with. And so we sat back and said, no, let's give people bang for their buck. Let's come up with products that we would be proud of, not just for home buyers and owners, but even for investors who are out there. Now, for us, we have four quadrants and groups, people groups that we are targeting. And I want to tell you the diaspora market has a big part of what we're doing because we lived out there. We understand what people are looking for out there. And we said, let's structure our product that the people out there would be proud of. Now, one of the things, and to answer you, is information is so key to anyone who wants to do any investment, and especially when it comes to real estate. When we were out there, I remember trying to do a project, and I won't mention with what company back here, but of course, the time differences and everything just caused communication to be so lag. So at the time you need real-time data, you're not able to get it. One of the things that Beulah has constituted now is we have partnered with groups that we're able to get on a 24-hour call. So anybody who needs to get real-time data, irrespective of where you are in the world, you can get data about your investment with Beulah by just picking up the phone any time of the day or night. So some of these things are some of the things that we've been able to constitute just to make sure that as we move forward, anybody who partners with Beulah on any level is able to get information out as fast and as quickly and as real time as possible. We have also created an app by which anybody can be able to get on, see their project, see what it is that they've invested in, be able to do fly-throughs, be able to understand what is the size of your unit. In Kenya, what I found out is a lot of people don't even care about actual square meters of their house. So many times people say, is it a 2-bedroom house or is it a 3-bedroom house? Nobody knows how many square feet or how many square meters the unit is, which is a far cry from the West. So what happens is developers can come and say, look, we're building you a 200 square meter or a 2,000 square foot home, but nobody quite checks on the ground. And so a lot of theft has actually happened there where developers are concerned. We as Beulah want to set a different mark in this market. We have said we will start in Kenya. We have requests from people even in Nigeria. We have partnerships there. We have in different parts of Africa. But we said, you know what? Charity begins at home. And so we are starting off, like I said, end of October. We'll be launching our first project. We would like you to take a look. Please visit our website, beulahcity.co.ke, and just get to know a little bit more about what we're doing. Thanks, Anne.
All right. Thank you, Donald, for sharing everything that you're doing at Beulah. You've done a lot of research. I think what I really liked is about quality, because, the diaspora, when you're exposed out there, you want quality. Maybe people here, like you said, there's such lack of supply of housing that if you get it at what is considered affordable price, then people take it without questioning. But then the diaspora is demanding more, and they're demanding value, right? Because I've been in the real estate space, and sometimes you go somewhere and says it's a luxury house, a luxury apartment, and you look at it, you're like, there's nothing luxurious about this. So it's very important what it is that you're doing, that you think will create value for the diaspora, and that you've researched, you've done due diligence, and that's quite important. I think then for me, I'll go on to the chairman of Beulah, who's right there with you. And from what I read is you're the vision bearer of this Beulah City project. And for me, I do have to say I have listened to what you've said a lot about people investing in Africa. You've talked about how the capital is outside Africa. And of course, this conference really is around the diaspora organizing, right? So my question for you is that, look, we have the Africa diaspora out there, which is huge, right? You have these projects in real estate that require capital. A lot of this diaspora want to invest. What is it that you're doing at Beulah to engage with them? I mean, this is a platform that you can share with them and tell them, what is it that you envision around Beulah? How is it this investors, whether collectively or single-handedly, can be able to buy into these projects, and they can be able to create wealth for themselves, create great returns, and really in something that is trusted? Because I can tell you for a fact, what the diaspora is afraid of is investing in things that do not pan out. They have been failed many times. So what is it that you're doing as a chairman, making sure that you're directing your organization in the right way so that the diaspora can invest in your projects, and it's a win-win situation for both you at Beulah City and the diaspora?
Thank you very much, Anna. Very good questions. Just to say, I'm not the only vision bearer. My partner and I have actually started this together. We just split roles so that everybody's got some clear direction. But speaking of capital from diaspora and how to secure that, investments are about how secure our investments. And I think one of the big dilemmas that's hit the continent, there is a need and there's low supply, and there's an oversupply to a particular market and an undersupply to particular segments that need, and therefore figuring out which are these segments that require to be housed, which market segments are these, what kind of capital requires that. We've had to look at evergreen funds that are looking at a 15, 20-year type of timeline. We've got to look at capital that makes sense. We know the diaspora wants to invest, but we've got to structure our businesses in such a way that the people don't feel like it's a Ponzi scheme or that it's a scheme that's out to take their money. So first, one of our principles is we don't build with deposits. We don't use people's deposits to build. And therefore, we've secured ways to make sure if people would like to buy their houses and book them, they do that with their own lawyers and together with our lawyers. We only need your money at certain stages when we've actually met our thresholds. And therefore, we don't rely on deposits to build, but we've found groups putting aside money with their bank, their lawyer, making bookings for some of our properties, which is great. That starts to give us the access to certain groups out there that are looking at, long-term end user finance type of structures. One of the limitations in real estate, I think if the developers, as Donald, our CEO, was saying, if the developers find a gap, people will take advantage. Business sometimes is not always necessarily selfless. Sometimes it will be selfish in the way it looks at its bottom line. Therefore, they'll take advantage of what's happening in a market as far as gaps are concerned. But if we actually structure this right, there's enough to go around for everyone. There's enough to go around for many developers. If we think through end user finance, how can I rent to own? How can I build to own? So there's capital out there that's looking for adequate annual return greater than 2+ LIBOR or 3+ LIBOR. Pension funds, global groups around here in Africa also that Western funds that have actually invested time in Africa and money in Africa. And so we're tapping a lot into these to start growing that base. Once you do that, then you secure the necessary foundation for people to be able to say, this is a group I'd love to put my money behind. Because we don't have a 5 or 10-year view. We have a 40-year view because we can't solve the current problem in 5 years. It's impossible. And I'd encourage the diaspora to say there's a lot of that available, whether you're talking Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, it doesn't matter. It's also a world of partnerships now. So we have Beulah coming up in Nigeria. A $2 million investment there is actually a quicker return than a $2 million investment in Kenya. The Kenyan investment is more sophisticated. The demand in Lagos is too high. You've got 26 million people in Lagos alone. So when you talk about demand and supply, quality versus return on investment, you've got to look at all these things, put them on the right documents, let people trust you. So we're not in a hurry to start taking diaspora money for the simple fact, except for the purchases of the units. What we'd like to do is prove ourselves, demonstrate who we are, build a very long-term view of what it is we're solving for in various cities in Africa, and begin to partner with people along that same line of thought. But evergreen funds, green funds, we're not too much into your quick 3-4 year type of quick fund return, because those can be risky for real estate. So we've got to think very long-term in how we've laid out our capital structure and funding structures. We've also gone into partnerships that make a lot of sense in what we call balance sheet partnerships. And therefore these balance sheets that are much larger than ours, collaborating with our smaller balance sheet to give us a pretty equitable bottom line distribution. So I'm quite pleased with how we've structured our beginning deals to make sure we're not taking any money from people until they see the finished product.
Okay, that is really good to hear, Mr. Kula, because what I've seen in the market is a lot of developers were depending on the deposits from the buyers, which then led to very many stalled projects, right? And that is a problem, both for the developer and also the person who's investing, and that has ruined actually what people really think about real estate developers. But one thing I just want to be clear. So for you, the diaspora, you're saying what we want from you is to buy the units at this project that you have at this point.
If the diaspora has long-term funding, I'm so sorry, Anna, there was a time delay. Please go ahead and finish.
Okay, maybe you are about to answer what I was going to say. So one, it's either they're buying units, or the other way they can gauge is if they organize, because prior to you coming in, we're talking about organizing the diaspora. Unless the diaspora organizes, get a structure which is long-term, then they can now come into Bula City and say, look, we have this funding. We're not looking to get this money back in 1, 2, 3 years, but we're thinking long term. Then they have the ability then to invest into your projects because you're really looking for long-term funding. So you've gotten that from like institutional investors, but if the diaspora organizes, that's another way they can engage with you. So those are the two ways they can engage.
Yeah.
Is that clear? Is that what I got?
What we've seen from diaspora is a lot of them are saying, we want to buy a tower from you. Out of all your business, we want to buy a tower because the price points are so sweet for us. We believe it's a good return on investment. Beulah has made a strategic decision not to build in the peripheries. So we're actually in the cities. Our price points are actually unbelievable. So we've got prices starting from $20,000 for studios all the way to, $60,000 for 2 bedrooms. And we're talking about within malls, next to the junction in Nairobi. We'll be looking at the same kind of in the city center of Lagos. So we're not saying we want you to go live 70 miles from the outskirts of Nairobi and bring your kids to school at 4 a.m. in the morning. No, we say we think there is a generation, if they got a plan to do that. So what we're seeing from diaspora is we want to invest in your buildings and then rent out because the yield makes so much more sense for us. And the price points allow us to buy 5 units as opposed to buying 1 unit as an individual. That's what we've seen. And that is very available for us in terms of that short-term. Well, they take a long-term view on a return that in 7 or 8 years, their unit is paid back because the rent points are very friendly from where we are. The same thing goes for the long-term thinking. For those that have a longer-term thinking, we're also available to do that. So that's the way we would give something to everybody. The short-term is for buy the units. The long-term is for let's think longevity, but we can give the necessary securities for the investments.
Okay, thank you for clearing that. So the next person who is on the panel is a friend of mine, Ms. Zoliswa Daku. She is from South Africa. Zoliswa, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I do see you.
Okay.
All right, welcome, Zoliswa. The great thing about for you, Zoliswa, and why we are engaged is the fact that you are not thinking small, right? So when we were talking about real estate, most times when I speak to people about real estate, they're thinking about small, tiny plots, an acre. And I was like, I studied finance and real estate. I'm used to thinking master plan projects or at least well-organized projects. And for you, when you told me the kind of work that you were doing in South Africa, I was amazed. And I said, this lady needs to talk to the diaspora and tell them there are opportunities beyond just small things. There's opportunities to do large things. Like the Beulah City talked about how the diaspora is able to buy units, the whole tower of apartments. So you've actually been able to do really big development projects. So I would really like to hear more. You can share to the diaspora what it is that you're doing at DACU because like I said, you've had great opportunities. You've told me about malls, about student housing, commercial properties. There's so many things that you have available, but then you need capital. So how does a well-organized investment group approach you to be able to take advantage of the real estate projects that you have? What do you have to tell them?
Thank you so much, Anne. And definitely thank you for the invitation. It's probably also got to do with networking amongst women, specifically in the diaspora. So here I am talking to you, being from South Africa, and we've created a relationship. So as you know that I started in this sector, it's probably now 20 years as just a mere lawyer. So I saw an opportunity after realizing that, you know what, you get tired of doing transactions for others, but then you note certain opportunities within sectors. And I think because of my traveling and exposure to international markets and the work that I was doing in the economic development space, then I got so much attracted to what we call urban regeneration. So it was more about regeneration of towns, regeneration of cities, and as well as also how do we then model ourselves against the world? You know, from time to time, it could be in Africa and at certain times it could be in the US or UK. But then as time went on, we really came up with something that actually works very well currently for the affordable market. And I'm listening to colleagues who are talking, and I'm saying that probably as much as we are focusing on what we call high capital projects, and with them focusing on specifically the residential market, is then to say that the demand currently in South Africa is actually for those that are unbankable, in the sense of being able to attract bonds, to be able to get involved in terms of participating in affordable housing. We call it affordable housing. So it's the other way around. When you're looking at foreign investors, we look at our own local people occupying these spaces. But the advantage is that you get incentivized for taking those groups, because of their salary bands. Then government gets involved in terms of incentivizing you for infrastructure. So here's an opportunity. It's exciting. It's a profitable development, where already as an investor, you know that there is some security with regards to grant funding that our government has in place, and it's a policy and it's regulated, and you don't have to have any fears with regards to any high capital projects that you can get involved in that. So the only thing that we then need is then those bonding that are required, which could be any bank that can do it. And I liked one of the colleagues that spoke earlier on, where he said, we need an investment bank as Africa. We don't have these facilities. We are struggling in South Africa. We're working mainly with international banks who tend to not understand our local products and the environments that we've grown up in, which is where we are currently developing. So when I'm revitalizing, I look at the smaller towns. So you'll find that the town that I'm working in, it's similar to a town in Kenya. There's no difference, because we're trying to build infrastructure, we're building hospitals, we're building houses, we're looking at student accommodation. We're really into revitalizing those spaces so that people can have spaces to live, work, and play. But the good part, if you're looking at also some of the members that are talking, already when you're looking at your sale units of $20,000, that's the same market that you'll have in South Africa. Very exciting. So if you've got such an experience, you can come and build in South Africa the same kind of, but the good thing, you'll get these incentives as well with regards to the product. So that is needed. There's quite a huge demand. If you've looked at the news, we have what we call, what I've stolen as a business, as an American model with regards to Chicago, co-living and co-housing. Because what we've realized is that with the digital world that has come on board, where students are no longer going to school, and you've got entry-level workers that are no longer interested in going to the workplace. So what you're having, we're creating what we call apartment hotels, where people can have a bed, they could have a study, they could have a bathroom and a mini kitchen, but they still want an open space, where a communal, where they could share spaces of eating, utilizing Wi-Fi, laundry services, etc. So it becomes like a student model, but it's geared towards your entry-level workers as well. So if you can't get students, you can be able to get your entry-level workers, which is what is quite big in South Africa, because we've got a lot of migration. Remember, people move from the small cities into the bigger cities. I come also from a very small town called Utrecht in the Eastern Cape. So I ended up staying in Cape Town. So there's always that migration after university, because you're looking for the bigger city and bigger opportunities. So that's the market that we have, and it's quite huge. So our actually property portfolio is sitting at about 5.8 trillion in terms of rents. You can convert it to yourself. It's about $600 billion what you're looking at. So you have all those modalities and an infrastructure that is ready to accommodate you. And as well as also on top of that, what is exciting is your sustainability models that we have. You're eco-friendly. So if you're not looking at millennials, which is what I've explained now, there's a retirement market that is so vast and huge. People are tired of staying in bigger houses, or what we call individual units. They are more looking at retirement villages. And that is also another friendly support typology that we have, and it's quite exciting. And I think for my sister that is in the material space, we've got quite high material costs here, and we are trying with COVID, by all means, to have more plants. We don't have plants. I think if you remember, and there was a stage when I was working with YPAC, where we're actually looking at creating those material plants, because we need them. We need cement producers, etc., because they are limited opportunities with regards to people having these facilities locally. So we always have to get and import all of this stuff from outside, especially when it comes to steel and so forth. So it's a market where we don't have to get involved with each other solely at an investment in terms of equity, but we can get involved in terms of investments with regards to distribution and production as well, whereby I buy from you, or else we share in terms of equity with regards to material and manufacturing systems that could be utilized in different products within the world, for that matter. So I think it's been exciting, and we still continue. Our portfolio is very exciting. We've got running a very nice 20 billion portfolio in terms of rents, and it's growing every day. And what is making it so special is we're targeting government land as well, because we've realized that we can get it at nominal rates, because we want our investors to be secured, because we know with government, the land that we're getting, they don't want it, it's underutilized. We convert it into mega projects and multi-cities throughout the country. So I'm quite excited, and I think such topics in Africa, we need more of them, and I'm sure we can build these cities and towns and create more exciting opportunities. I really invite everybody to come and work with me.
Great. Thank you, Zalisa. In fact, when you're talking about building mega cities, I know Rachel in the prior panel talked about the Diaspora city here in Kenya, in Taveta. So those are the things that we're doing. I like the fact that with your development company, you're understanding the trends. You're talking about apartment hotels. Things are changing with the millennials. Things are changing with retirement. So I'm glad to hear that you're understanding the trend and providing the right products for what the investors are looking for. And of course, if they're diaspora organized, they can be able to come in together with you and be able to purchase these properties. So thank you very much, Zalisa, for that. I think because of time, I'd really like to talk to Donald really around property management, right? So development is one thing, right? It's one thing to develop. It's one thing to buy a unit in the diaspora, right? And it's another thing to manage that property. How do you collect rent from a tenant? You're all the way there. It's crazy. Probably you've taken a mortgage to pay for that. It's really hard. If you rely on your family, they probably collect rent, never remit it to you. So there's a problem around property management, making sure, one, you manage the property and you maintain the value. Two, you make sure that you unlock the value and the cash flow monthly. So tell us, what is it that you're doing at Beulah City, or what do you envision to do to ensure that if the diaspora decides that they want to purchase a unit in one of your projects, how will you ensure that you're managing the project and that they're getting their monthly rent in a systematic way? If you could share that.
Thank you, Anne, for that question. Thank you. And again, going back to the fact that we experienced living abroad and thought through how do we get into investments in the country. We're those guys who experienced the partnership of trying to get your family members to understand how you want to invest and what you need to invest in. And sometimes those things are not always aligned, as you rightfully put it. And so for us, as we look at it, we're looking at it from a standpoint of how do we put a product out there that an investor or anybody who's looking at owning some property would be very comfortable around, knowing that they have a partnership on the ground with an institution that is, number one, credible. And trust is the only thing that we can sell. And the truth is, we, like my chairman said, we are in this for 40 years. We are not looking at trying to ruin our name on the get-go. However, we've got to figure out what is a product that we can put out into the market that fits or suits this kind of an investor. And so some of the things that we've looked at, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here, is understanding how do we take care of individuals who either are not interested in managing the property themselves or can't manage the property themselves for one reason or another. They're not on the ground or are out they may even be living in Kenya, but that's not the thing they want to do. So if you're not investing in a REIT where you are, you've financed or you've put some of your investment into a property real estate company that goes out and does all these things. But if you own your own unit, what we've done is we've created what is called the MANCO, or the management company that looks or takes care of your investment. What that means is we're able to put in tenants in your home. We're able to make sure the lights are working in your home, the power bill has been taken care of. But I'll even sweeten the deal and say this. We are considering products where you end up paying a one-time service fee. And this is something that we are quickly formulating and quickly coming towards an end, so that your property and the value of your property only appreciates over time. One of the things that we've realized is people go in and buy units, but if your neighbor doesn't care about the trash that's sitting outside in the common area, they struggle to put their service charge on time every time, then it becomes hard for your property value to remain at par or even increase over time. So we're coming up with solutions, and we have 2 or 3 different solutions that we're looking at right now in ensuring that the paint work on the building remains, the lighting on the common areas is working, the water supply is good. We are at par when it comes to even generators, and making sure that they're fueled, making sure that you have the people who are taking care of this property from the get-go. So to answer your question, Anne, we as Beulah have come up with a few products that we're putting out in the market, and starting October, you'll start to hear more about this, where an investor will have an option around how they keep their property appreciating.
Well, I see you have a solution. That is a big problem that I see in Kenya, really around management, right? And service fee, right? You pay, the other person doesn't pay, and it affects the value of the property. So I'm very glad to hear that that is a solution that Beulah City is providing. Because of time, I really would like us to have a discussion around collective investments in real estate. Donald, you mentioned something about REITs. Earlier when we were talking about creating wealth, in the creating wealth session, we really actually had people discuss about REITs, because the diaspora is saying we're not on the ground, we want options. So we did talk to them about REITs. Now, on this particular segment, what I would like all of you, Emma, Mr. Julian, Zolistra, Donald, can you tell me, what do you see if you've thought about it? What do you think is the right way for the diaspora to organize collectively to invest in great real estate products, right? You've mentioned about single-handedly, but I'm talking about collectively. What do you think needs to be done? What would you encourage them to do? Because single-handedly, which is the past, has ensured that the real estate development on this continent is haphazard. It's not really well done. What do you think they need to do and look out for?
I think ladies first, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Anne. I think interesting conversations around REITs, and actually it's across. I was just even looking at a map of Africa and seeing how many regulations and across Africa have come up around REITs. And I think for us in real estate, we thought it was going to be the thing that would really take it to the next level. For some reason, it's been 5, 6 years, 7 years, REIT has not caught the fire we thought it would catch. For some reason, it seemed like an easy sell to everyone, like avoid the hassle. Like I was saying, there is a hassle to real estate development and doing things hands-on, and even in buying, and I think, the team from Beulah said it, that trust is a problem. People actually sell trust, and unfortunately, that has been broken so many times over and over. And we thought REITs, because it was going to bring a lot of structure. Unfortunately, for some reason, hasn't caught fire. I like the conversation that we are, heading towards, of somewhere between REITs and individual, finding some median there, and saying, look, there's always, value in numbers. Africans, takes a village to raise a child, takes a village to invest in real estate. I would say that. So I think I'm liking the conversation even from the previous convo, because it's something that comes very naturally to locally. People organize around chamas, people are organized around SACCOs. So it's something that's not new in a sense, but then diaspora taking that is a very authentic African thing, organizing around it in diaspora, and now coming back to invest, and therefore spreading. When I was telling you about your personality and being very careful about how you invest and matching your risk appetite. But when you're in a group, you almost spread that risk. You almost have different strengths within a group of people who can organize, whether it's due diligence on a developer, and you're doing it from abroad and checking out, and just the network of even doing due diligence and being able to tap into different resources, and seeing how do we invest. I've seen also an interesting development coming up where actually rather than investing even in the model like we like has been proposed here, where you actually buy a tower as a group, as a chama or as a SACCO abroad and invest in Kenya. I've seen some people actually coming together and saying, hey, we can actually build and employ and architects and people on the ground who not necessarily our relatives, but people who can then look out for us. But it takes also someone with a bit of experience in real estate within that network. So and in a sense is just coming back to who we are as Africans, working together and spreading that risk in a sense, as had been said, and then also just matching even that personality of the group itself and seeing what are we going to do? Are we going to buy? And when you're looking at buying, there's a due diligence to be done about the developer. What's their track record? Who can speak for them? Who in that sense, or is it that we're actually going to develop and getting the resources and saying this is something we want to do maybe long term, in a sense what the Donald and the team at Beulah did is actually saw a need and organized themselves even while they were abroad and came to solve a problem while making some money out of it and solving a problem. So there are two ways to look at it, and really hoping that REITs will sort of pick up, have more people and more products also being floated. The few that have been floated have not been very, very, successful, and probably just then it's been a downward spiral, at least in the Kenyan market. There is hope in the sense of there was a shift maybe 3 years ago in terms of affordable housing and mass projects and looking at it as corporate developers and big developments, which there's a lot of attention in terms of affordable housing, which is where it should have been 30 years ago. So we really are hopeful in the next 5 years there'll be a lot of changes. Just to speak to something in terms of trends, and Corona is a reality, and seeing how has Corona shaped the landscape, as it were, in terms of real estate in Kenya, and Kenya and Africa and world over, because the trends have been sort of similar. It's a buyer's market. This is actually the time to be thinking and organizing, because this is the time to do it. There's a bit of a dip in that sense, but also a very interesting, and as the conversation on property management is going on, there's a lot of interest in terms of staycations, and people. Airbnbs are all the rave now in Nairobi and the like. So there's a lot of interest in that sense of being able to furnish your unit, have it on Airbnb, and also the model that Beulah have talked about in terms of them managing it for you. So you're not having to think about a lot of things on the ground. So there's been an interesting trend of people not being able to travel far, but sort of traveling within, and I think that's across, even in the States. I've seen that people traveling in state and not and sort of creating an interest already around where they are. So those are some of the trends that we've seen and we need to look out for. But also the reality also is in terms of financial, the lenders, I don't know, lenders locally at least have become a bit more risk averse, and it takes a little bit of convincing to be able to borrow, because everybody sort of just was waiting with bated breath to see what the next things were. So in that regard, it's very interesting. We are going to be launching an online program, an online course for anyone who wants to relate to, just learn a little bit more and get in depth. So I'm just encouraging everyone on the webinar to look out for that. Speaking to our diasporans, we know you may not be able to be on the ground or come for masterclass in there, but it's really about educating yourself before you make the move, doing your due diligence. Measure twice and cut once. Do your due diligence. It's capital intensive. Find out, ask around before you make a move. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Emma, for sharing that and also telling us about the program you're going to be putting together where people can learn, because I think education, knowledge is very important, especially if you're going to get into a really capital intensive or a huge investment. You need to educate yourself, so it's very important what it is that you're doing. Because of time, I would like Mr. Julian to also answer that question and maybe even give us your last remarks. And then we can go ahead to Donald and Soliswa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the whole aspect about trust, safety, security of my funds, my house, you're not going to do near affordable housing, whether you're going to where the government subsidizes. And I like what Ms. Daku was saying. If the government's subsidizing on some of the infrastructure costs to make affordable housing possible, which I want to say they've done a good job in Kenya. Implementation's been tough, but it's getting there. The REITs are taking time, but there's something in between that we have to crack, that certain groups here have cracked in raising some of these REITs outside of our current limitations. They've gone and raised them on the London Stock Exchange for the purpose of building in Africa. People feel safer there. And therefore, I think we're going to see, we're seeing infrastructure bonds in our countries oversubscribed by the government. That tells you there's a lot of faith in what's happening with this last frontier of the world called Africa. And if we develop that trust, put the structures in place, put the right people together, the back end might be very sophisticated, the front end does not need to be. It's in doing so that we're going to reach the diaspora, because if they're investing in New York or in London for a Kenyan project, they feel safer. And if we can crack how to look into those investment bank type of collaborations around green bonds, around REITs in markets that REITs have worked, but for the purpose of doing it in an external market. These have been tried and tested. So the REIT may not work in Kenya, but it could work in London for Nigeria. It could work in London for Kenya. If you've got the right balance sheet relationships, if you've put the right papers together, I think those are ways people can invest in those things. So our regulatory infrastructure may take some time, but there's still ways for people to feel safe about making that move. So we think the sophistication has arrived, the continent's growing, Nairobi skyline has transformed in the last 7 years. That means something's happening. There's a conversation about commercial versus homes. There's a conversation about, as Emma mentioned, about what has happened with Corona. Interestingly, for some of our partners in real estate, they saw their highest sales for homes in 2020. It's unbelievable. They sold entire blocks of what they were building in 2020 because people somehow became very conscious about being in a home and the demand for the home and whether the home needed a study area because the commercial side was beginning to hurt, but the homes were becoming office homes at the same time. So they sold out, different units in very different market segments. So I think it's just a matter of time. For those who get in now, I'd say trust is the biggest currency you have, as Donald has mentioned. At the same time, delivery, execution, quality, just build the name and be patient. And I think then people will trust that to be able, but different investment models from different markets. I think I'll feel safer if I'm in America, putting money in America for a Kenyan project. I feel like it's closer. And you'll be surprised how many of those kind of models exist and are being used, but are just not very public or very loud. And that gives you better regulatory environment in those markets.
Wow, we need to build trust. It will take time. That's what I've heard you say. Okay, wow. So, but Diaspora organized, but if you want to raise capital, if you want to do big things, then maybe think about raising it outside. And I think when you're talking about that, you talked about like Acon, which is a real estate developer in Kenya. and that's the model that they use. So we can start that now, and then eventually as our capital markets grow, as we build trust as developers, as REIT managers, then eventually I think it will then move back to the continent. Okay, thank you for that. Donald, do you have anything to add around that before we go on to the next?
Look, and maybe Anne, as a parting shot, what I would say is, look, there's demand on the ground for housing and good housing. But I think affordability really, when we really, do a deep dive, is I'm paying rent now of 50,000 shillings a month. Can I own a unit at the same amount, living in the same place I have been living, working, and playing? Once we get to a place where we can cross over from just rental into affordability as far as owning a unit over the next 15, 20 years, then I would actually feel that this is an affordable unit. I think there's opportunities out there, as Julian has said, for groups to come together and just figure out how do we create a fund that is patient money, make my money over time, but then be able to meet a need on the ground. I think there are many people who would like to invest in a business or sector that has growth potential in it, but not necessarily want to buy a unit per se. I think structuring something that will be able to allow the diaspora market to be able to look into this and be able to grow it out, not just in Kenya, but Africa is rife for stuff like this, for products like this. We want to start something as Beulah and be able to provide, like I said, for that one quadrant called the diaspora market, we know what you need. We know where you're trying to invest. We know how you're trying to invest. We want to be able to meet your need. Thank you, Anne.
All right. Great. I heard you talk about creating a fund that has been a dream at Regal Africa, because my background is in asset management. So maybe it's something we can really engage about, because again, some people in the diaspora don't want to own a unit, but they want returns that you get in real estate. How do you do that? How do you structure that? And maybe REIT is not the way to go, because again, the only REIT we have in Kenya is an IREIT. Maybe they're not interested in the South African market. How do you do that? So that is something that needs to be worked on.